I call the meeting to order. Good evening. My name is John Samia, and I am the chair of the Shrewsbury Select Board. On behalf of my fellow board members and the town manager's office, I'd like to welcome you to our August 27th, 2024 Select Board meeting. Tonight's live broadcast is being brought to you by Sarah Hashey of the Shrewsbury Media Connection. Tonight's meeting also will be available via the Shrewsbury Media Connection on YouTube starting tomorrow, and all of our previous meetings are also available on the same platform. Before we begin, colleagues, I'd ask that we introduce ourselves.
Michelle Conlon.
Carlos Garcia.
Teresa Flynn.
Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
Assistant to Town Manager Justin Dobson.
And again, I'm John Samia, Chair of the Select Board. First item on the agenda under preliminaries is to approve bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is to review and act to approve the minutes of August 13th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, announcements and reports. Colleagues, any reports?
I just
Yes,
have
Carlos.
one. Thank you. So October is Emergency Preparedness Month. The Shrewsbury Council on Aging has received a $4,000 grant from the Massachusetts COA to create emergency kits for October's Emergency Preparedness Month, and their goal is to assemble 400 kits for Shrewsbury seniors. They are looking for donations of at least 400 of each item on their emergency checklist. So some of those items include gallons of water, first aid kits, disinfectant wipes. Anyone who's interested is able to reach out to COA Director Holly Loop to see if they can participate in that and support their goal in reaching 400 items for each of the emergency items on the list. Businesses or individuals donating the required items will have their logo or name featured on all marketing materials and can host an informational table, if applicable, at their event on Tuesday, October 29th from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's it. Town Manager's Report. Mr. Mizikar.
Good evening, board members. At your request, I look forward to providing the second monthly update regarding our transition of solid waste haulers. So I'll just touch on a couple points. We still continue to have really good communications between the town staff and Casella, who is our new hauler. Things aren't going perfectly, though no major transition like this does, but we are seeing continual improvement and still much improved over the transition time from the last hauler. So just a couple specific updates. While there still occasionally happen, Casella has made significant modification to their equipment to limit the sludge spillage that occurred in town. Any spills that have occurred recently have all been self-reported by Casella and cleaned up right away by the company. So we're happy with their responsiveness, their improvement there. We, of course, are waiting for Casella to receive the new equipment that they've purchased just for Shrewsbury, but unfortunately that's going to be quite some time still. So they'll continue to make modifications to their truck where needed to prevent that type of situation from happening. When it comes to call volumes, from July 1st to August 18th, we received 274 calls regarding trash matters from Shrewsbury residents. That's Casella. That's a 41% fewer than the same time period when we transitioned to the previous hauler. So this is pretty much steady at 55 calls per week over that time period. So happy that in comparison we're still lower than we were, and we're still working through some of the new transition and have missed pickups, and sometimes entire roads are missed, but they are promptly addressed within one business day. With regards to route timing, without any mechanical issues, Casella is handling the routes very well. We have had some truck issues and delays at the incinerator, which happened regardless of the hauler. That has pushed some evenings later than we'd like. That has happened a few times already this week, the first 2 days, due to mechanical issues. Again, that will all be addressed ultimately with new equipment. So that's the primary report. I'm pleased that we see good progress and no major issues where people have to hold on to trash or recycling for more than 24 hours, even if there is a miss. Those numbers will continue to diminish over time. They continue to be responsive. And just a final note that we'd like to remind residents that the final recycling bin drop-off will be held on September 21st at the Highway Garage at 211 South Street from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., which coincides with the yard waste drop-off.
Thanks for the update. Big difference from 2019 on the trash hauler. The data is important, 41%. Fewer calls is good. The more important fact is that they're addressing it within the next business day. So that is important. If you could continue updates for the next couple of months, just to make sure that we stay on top of that, but that is good news. Any questions or comments for the town manager before we go on? So next item on the agenda is under item 5, preliminaries public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31 to offer citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during Select Board meetings on matters within the board's authority. No one has expressed a desire this evening to speak under this opportunity, Policy 31. Those wishing to speak at a future regularly scheduled meeting can notify the chair of the Select Board through the Select Board's office by the end of business on the Monday prior to the next regularly scheduled meeting by written correspondence or email at selectboard@shrewsburyma.gov. And just a reminder to the community that we hold a Select Board office hours, our first Tuesday meeting of the month from 5:30 to 6:30. We meet in the room right over there, across from the Select Board's room here, and would welcome an opportunity to talk to you about any issues that are of concern to you. So want to put that back out there. Next item is under meetings and hearings, and Mr. Mizikar will talk about this in a little bit on town manager goals. This is an opportunity for our town departments to shine, to talk about what they do. We've done this in the past, previous years. The only other opportunity, other than the individual meetings in the case of the library, would be at Board of Trustees meetings, or other times at Finance Committee hearings. But other than that, there's not that opportunity to talk about things that we do outside of the budget, all the daily things that happen and all the great things. So I would like to, as part of the series, the first one, Library Department update from Priya Ratnam, Director of the Shrewsbury Public Library. So good evening, and thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. At the beginning of the new fiscal year, I usually compile a report of the previous year's service and program statistics at the library. I thought I would share this snapshot of the stats for fiscal year 24. As you know, we have approximately 1,000 visitors a day, and these include regular patrons who may not borrow any materials but come to the library to use the study rooms or public computers or Wi-Fi in quiet spaces. Of course, there are families with small children who attend the various story times or recreational and cultural activities offered by our youth services staff. The circulation of the physical items in the library also indicate that it has been a busy year. And you can see that despite the steady increase in e-book circulation, the interest and demand for print books have not diminished. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions on these stats. Otherwise, I'll provide an update on our summer reading program.
Any questions or comments on the stats? I'd like to continue, and we can ask you questions at the end as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So we just wrapped up a very successful summer reading program. It was extremely gratifying to see the participation in the children's teen and adult summer reading program. We have an online platform called Beanstack, where 221 young readers entered their reading logs. And every time a child came into the children's room, they could roll a jumbo die. And the number of dice rolls in the last 2 months was 7,187. Constantly from morning to night, kids were rolling the dice. The number of programs that were offered was 139, and program attendance was 4,769. The number of teens who registered on Beanstack was 106, and 205 reviews of books were written, and they are on display on the windows of the teen room. Adult participation in the summer reading program was also more than in years past. Adults could participate by submitting a paper entry or an online entry for a chance to win prizes. And there was a total of 192 paper entries and 462 online entries. The summer also sees a number of teen volunteers volunteering in the library, and we had 49 teen volunteers who contributed 1,701 service hours. I would like to highlight the library's new maker space. Maker spaces are collaborative spaces where people gather to get creative with DIY projects, have an opportunity to use technological tools to make stuff, and do STEM and STEAM projects. We've had a 3D printer for many years, and it's extremely popular. Last year, we received a federal LSTA grant, and we were awarded $30,000 to create and maintain a maker space. Library staff and community volunteers have been working on researching and purchasing the equipment and planning programs. Some of the things we purchased with grant funds are sewing machines, an embroidery machine, craft and hardware supplies, a laser cutter, and a silhouette cutter. We also used ARPA funds to purchase a second 3D printer, a textile printer, iPads that are used in technology classes for children and adults, computers in the children's room, podcasting equipment, a replacement of the sound system in our meeting room, PlayStation in the teen room, a cricket maker, and a Charlie cart. If you don't know what a Charlie cart is, it's a very cool mobile kitchen with kitchen gadgets and tools that can be used for cooking-related programs in the library and at outreach locations. The Charlie cart comes fully equipped with an oven, a rinse station, induction cooktop, a Vitamix blender, and many pieces of kitchen essentials. I love cooking, and I'm really looking forward to offering some cooking programs, some talks on nutrition, and combining the two. So it's very exciting, very excited about it. Library staff and community volunteers from Technocopia, a maker space in Worcester, and students from area colleges have been working together to provide classes for children, teens, and adults. We are planning more classes in the fall to train community members on how to use the various equipment. The official grand opening of the maker space is planned for Saturday, November 9th from 12 to 4 p.m. There will be demonstrations of makerspace tools in the children's room, meeting rooms, and the learning lab. And finally, I would like to promote an upcoming talk that is part of the Distinguished Speaker Series sponsored by the Library Foundation Board. This is a talk on the power of storytelling by New York Times bestselling author Chris Bajalian. We will be hosting this event on Tuesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. at the high school auditorium, as we are anticipating a bigger crowd than what can be accommodated in the library. So please register and plan to attend Chris Bajalian's talk at the high school auditorium on October 1st at 7 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I'll open it up in a second. I went on the library website. It's just chock full of information, but looking at various events happening this week, from Lego Club, Genealogy Club, basics of Python in 6 weeks, Babies, Books, and Bubbles, Walnut Place Condominium Association Owners Meeting, basics of sewing. It's just a vibrant center where a lot of different things happen. And then as you go through the list, one thing that I remember hearing many years ago about books, right? Oh, we're not going to need to have books anymore. Everyone's going to ebooks, and that hasn't happened. I think that ebooks are good, but folks still like to have the standard paper in front of them. One question I have for you, so it's a vibrant area, a lot of people walking through the doors. What trends are you seeing? So I think about the library many years ago now for me, but you'd go and study, you'd get resources, you'd write reports, and then it continued to grow. It went to music and professional opportunities and computers. Do you see any trends now that we need to get ready for, or are we there, or we cover a lot of it and then it's around the edges? Or what, if anything, do you see changing in the next few years that we need to or start thinking about?
Sure, that's a great question. And the maker space is something that's, happening in many libraries. And we are extremely fortunate that we've been able to fund this first through ARPA funds and then the grant that we received called Creative Communities. So we've been able to purchase a lot of equipment. Now, the challenge is having the staff to offer the programs. We are looking at volunteers, and I said as I mentioned, we have been partnering with, organizations, community organizations, trying to get volunteers. But to sustain this and to make it a vibrant maker space, we do need staff. We currently have 2 technology librarians, and our assistant library director is in charge of this whole maker space. They are doing their best. Last year, we lost a little momentum when there was a turnover of these staff members in the adult services department. And then now we do have technology librarians, but they are pulled in various directions. They are offering, they're working as librarians. They are working on this maker space. And we have to offer classes. We want to be able to have community members come and use all this equipment. But we can't it cannot be unsupervised. So we are struggling, and that is a little bit of a challenge to see how we'll be able to maintain this and keep it going as a robust maker space.
Thank you. One other question. Do you see, when I drive to work, and some of the other towns have smaller libraries, seemed like we were starting to get foot traffic from adjacent communities. Is that still a trend where we have a beautiful area for our residents to meet, and it serves so many purposes and provides so many opportunities from young to older?
Right.
Are other adjacent communities doing what we're doing, or is it as much of a tremendous resource as I see it for our town?
It depends on how much of resources they have and whether they can provide, as robust services like we do. We do see people from other communities, not just smaller libraries. We see people coming from Worcester because they say this library is easier to access, parking is easier. And I've even heard from the library director, the Worcester library director, who says that people talk about the programs that are offered at our library. So definitely we see folks from other communities coming to our library.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, questions or comments?
Sure. I love the stats. I love numbers and seeing this, a snapshot of what a year looks like at the Shrewsbury Public Library. You guys offer so much that it's such a benefit to the community. I know my family has benefited from your speaker series and museum passes and classes for kids and adults and just books. On top, there's so much more beyond books that's offered there. I love, one of the things that I think is really neat that the Shrewsbury Public Library does is the Library of Things.
Sure.
And so this Charlie cart that you have that's a mobile kitchen is sort of part, I feel like it's sort of part of that where, can you tell us more about the Library of Things? I know there's a seed library in the spring, a spice library,
Sure.
all of these different things that it's so much more than just a place where you can get books.
Sure, absolutely. So going back to your question about trends, Library of Things is another trend that most libraries have adopted as much as they can afford. And I talked about the equipment that we purchased with ARPA funds and the grant funds, which will be part of the makerspace. We have other stuff that can be loaned out and people can borrow, and that comes under the library of things category. And there are various categories there where we have kitchen gadgets, we have induction cooktops, and other stuff as part of kitchen gadgets. We have gardening tools. We have, again, electronic equipment. Those are things that people can borrow. So you don't have to purchase, a new gadget. You can borrow it from the library, try it out, see if you like it, or a gardening tool which you only use in the spring or fall or whatever. You don't have to really purchase. You can borrow it from the library. And that's, I think, the beauty of the library, right? That we offer so many things that people can borrow. You don't have to purchase. And the seed library is a fun thing that we do in the spring. We have a line of people waiting to pick up the seeds in the day that the seed library is open. And the spice library is something, again, that we highlight one spice every month and have free packets of spice that people can grab. And there are recipes and cookbooks along with that, to go with that. So we try and connect all the resources that we have, from the traditional books to information in other formats and materials that people can borrow.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Carlos?
I've got some. Thank you, Priya, for the presentation. I also love looking at the stats. And it's just always wonderful to hear about the great programming that the library offers, and the amount of knowledge and joy that the library offers to patrons. And I was curious, so in the stats here, you mentioned all of the programming that you offer and the amount of hours and patrons that have participated in those. And it's wonderful to hear about all that. How often are community members reaching out to reserve spaces? Is that part of stats that you also track? I don't know if
You
that's
mean the meeting room space
the
or the
meeting
study
rooms.
room space?
In the meeting room space to like host community events or whatnot.
The meeting room space is pretty much booked. We have library events, programs are also offered there. Though we have a children's program room, some of the story times attract so many people that we can't have it in the children's program room. So it's offered in the main meeting room. So mornings we have either children's story times or English conversation circle programs. So there are a lot of programs that the library hosts. And then, of course, we allow people to rent the space for outside programs. It's pretty much booked. Sometimes we do have to decline a request
Okay.
because it's so busy.
That's wonderful. I've got a few more.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think one of the great things about the library also is that you are open on Sundays due to the Sunday
October
sponsorships.
through May, yeah.
I was curious if you could just talk a little bit about that. How is that going, and how can folks perhaps donate or learn more to participate in that?
Sure. Yeah, as you know, it's a great program, the Sunday sponsorship. Since 2005 or 2006, the library has been open on Sundays because of generous contributions of community members, businesses, and private individuals. And we are extremely grateful to all of them. We have consistently, the donors have been consistently contributing every year. It's $800 to sponsor one Sunday. So we are open for about 30 to 32 Sundays during the season from October through May. And every year we are able to, we receive the contributions from generous donors. That makes it possible for us to keep the library open.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. And then just my last one, I see in here that we are borrowing maybe more than double the items than we're loaning to other libraries. through the interlibrary loan system. So could you just touch on that a bit? And
Sure. That's a very consistent number year after year. It's about 30,000 items borrowed from other libraries and about 15,000 that we loan to other libraries. And I like to say that Shrewsbury is a community of readers, and our patrons request materials from other libraries. Though we have a robust material collection, we still request and receive books and other materials from other libraries. So we have a great community.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing that I noted, notarized 124 documents. How often have you heard someone ask, I have to have this notarized, where do I go? And the first thing you think of is, well, go to a bank where you may or may not have an account. You're not gonna, and this is just another asset or resource for a resident to go. It's not often, but you do get it, anything with real estate,
Right.
or anything, your signature is part of that process. So that's just another great resource for our
Great
community.
service,
Yeah,
yes.
it's good stuff. Great, any other questions?
If I could just
Sure.
note, the memory cafe that is offered at the library. I think in the town of Shrewsbury has 3 memory cafes. And so at the library specifically, they're offered on the first and third Fridays of the month. And that's a resource for, families who are suffering from memory loss, Alzheimer's, or other forms of dementia, and caregivers. And that's an important resource for the community to know about.
Absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that.
I just want
Good.
to say thank you, Priya, for everything that you do.
Thank
Very
you.
much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Great, well, there's nothing else. Thank you very much for coming.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thanks, Priya.
Great opportunity to learn about our departments and the great things that they do on a regular basis for all of our residents. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good night.
Next item on the agenda, also under meetings and hearings, it's a meeting with Christopher McGoldrick, Director of Planning and Economic Development, regarding a housing production plan update. Good evening, and welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me this evening. Tonight we're going to go through a brief presentation on our housing production plan update, covering what a housing production plan is and the importance to the community. I'm going to give a basic overview of the required sections of a housing production plan, and a bulk of the presentation being a summary of our preliminary findings and data that we've collected. I'm going to try to keep it to about 15-20 minutes. We're going to cover a lot of data pretty quickly, but happy to go back to other slides as needed and have that discussion with the board. We also have a survey that was handed out. It's also available on our webpage. I just want to give a brief shout out to that resource. We have seen a lot of engagement so far. So that is up on the webpage, and is another opportunity for residents who may be watching that can participate in this update. So the housing production plan is a locally maintained plan, which is reviewed and approved by the state. It's a regulatory requirement, mainly for safe harbor provisions, but ultimately this plan assesses our community's housing needs, and it sets a 5-year vision of implementation goals and strategies based on local and regional data, as well as community input that we receive through this update process. State guidelines require 3 specific sections for a housing production plan. Those are the comprehensive housing needs assessment, the identification of affordable housing goals, and a set of implementation strategies to achieve those goals in that 5-year time frame. As an update to the previously approved plan, which was 2019, our comprehensive housing needs assessment will be updated to reflect recent figures, and our goals and strategies will be reviewed for their current status and updated to reflect the input that we receive from the community. The current housing production plan guides local decision makers in understanding housing needs and conditions. As mentioned, it is a key component to 40B's safe harbor provisions, contributes to the housing section of the comprehensive master plan, and is a required piece of housing choice community designation, which is tied to grant funding as well. Next slide, please. So just briefly on that, I did want to mention that data, we're going to cover a lot of data, but it really is public input that drives it. The data is only one piece of that, so that public input is critical. It'll be no surprise to anyone that Shrewsbury has seen consistent population growth over the past decade and is nearing 40,000 residents. Using conservative 1% growth rate compounded annually, our 2030 population projection is estimated to grow to approximately 41,000 residents. Actuals would anticipate to be slightly less. How does that compare regionally? Next slide. Compared to state and county figures, we have seen slightly above average growth over the past decade. However, compared to many surrounding communities, we've grown at a more modest pace. Shrewsbury has seen more measured growth than Boylston, Grafton, Westboro, or Worcester, whose populations have grown much more significantly. We've seen continued growth in the demographic identified as Asian descent, now comprising a little over a quarter of the population. We've also seen significant growth in households with individuals aged 65 and older, and further declines, though moderate, in households with individuals 18 years. This likely can be attributed to increased multi-generational households and over 55 development, which has been a policy point which our office and the town has pursued over the last decade, as well as a trend of new development that is less conducive to school-age children. Next slide, please. Diving a little deeper into our age cohort comparison, we see Shrewsbury's bell curve improving in the 20 to 40-year-old ranges, but we do see a new anomaly forming. Our previous plans identified elderly women living alone and single mothers as financially vulnerable populations seem to be growing in Shrewsbury. When looking at this bell curve of the population, we do see a further increase in women 85 and over, but we also see a new gap forming in women age 40 to 50. This may indicate an area that we may want to study further, and that could be an implementation step that we may want to pursue of where that age gap is now forming. Next slide, please. In lighter news, Shrewsbury remains one of the more affluent communities of the surrounding areas, remaining third highest in median household income and moving up to the second highest in median family income. In general, our area remains more affluent than state or county figures. Next slide. So just in terms of key takeaways, again, Shrewsbury has been outpaced in population growth compared to the surrounding communities. Our population is increasing in both age and diversity as people age in place and as families locate to this area. Median family income now ranks third highest among surrounding communities, and we have still the vulnerable population of single mothers and elderly living alone that have been consistently identified both in the 2012 and 2019 plans. Next slide, please. So moving into affordability, units built. So comparing these growth trends to historical development trends, we see declining development despite a growing population. This chart shows significant development trends in Shrewsbury, notably early subdivisions in the 50s and 60s, as well as multifamily development in the 70s and 90s, coinciding with the state establishment of Chapter 40B, and the Toll Brothers single-family development in the 2000s. Next slide. Looking deeper at existing units by type and comparing across surrounding communities, we see middle housing gaps in both Shrewsbury and Westboro that are not present in other communities, even at comparable unit counts. For this data set, it's important to note that single attached and duplex category would include row house type development typical of condos. We can also clearly see that Shrewsbury is outlying single family development in relation to other communities, both a product of our greater population but also smaller minimum lot sizes for single family homes compared to other communities. Next slide. Going just another step further into the number of rooms compared across communities, we see rental units in Shrewsbury being on the lower room count than other communities, and owner-occupied units being on the higher room count comparatively. Although room type is not specified in this data, it likely suggests that rental-style development has lower bedroom counts, less conducive to families, and single-family or condo developments, including attached in-law apartments or other bonus rooms. Next slide, please. Moving into affordability, although median gross rent as a percentage of household income is lower in Shrewsbury than state or county figures, there is a significant gap in contract and gross rent figures. Although not unexpected that rental units see a higher proportion of occupants at 80% or below area median income, which would qualify for affordable housing opportunities, when seen in the context of such high rents, it presents obvious challenges. We again see that housing cost burden, quantified as 30% or more of income going to paying housing costs, continues to disproportionately affect renters, with a significant portion paying 35% or more towards housing costs. Although not as drastic, householders are not exempt either, especially those with mortgages. And just remembering back to those figures of growing population and declining development as contributing factors. Next slide, please. When we look at housing, the cost burden figures as a percentage of a whole, and compare these severely cost burdened, which is 50% or more of income going to housing costs, we see that cost burden doesn't just affect lower income households. There is in fact a relative increase in severe cost burden at higher income levels as well, as people stretch their wallets to call Shrewsbury home. This cost burden community above 80% AMI is also an important demographic to note, as they will not qualify for affordable housing opportunities anywhere in Worcester County, and are at higher risk of being priced out of the region, not just the community. So when we look at income and affordability, again, key takeaway, Shrewsbury's subsidized housing inventory percentage, we did drop to 6.17%, previously 6.3%. We do have an additional 169 units which would be eligible for SHI, which would bring our percentage up to 7.3% once they're added. The most severe housing cost burden, 50% or more of income going to housing costs, tends to be among the lowest income levels, but also affects higher income levels as well. And median contract rent and median gross rent have also increased more drastically in Shrewsbury than state or county figures. And median gross rent as a percentage of household income has decreased more than Massachusetts or Worcester County, suggesting slowly declining levels of housing cost burden and rental properties, attracting higher income earners. So this is just kind of a recap of what we discussed of the population and demographics, housing characteristics, and income and affordability. You can skip that one, that was for the forum. So.
Thank you. Before I open it up, I have a question. 2019 housing production plan, I remember we had 25 to 34-year-old cohort was negative from the prior plan. It does look like the 30 to 34 age group has increased, at 25 to 29 not. It seems stagnant. Can we get information, or how deep does this information go? Can we find out where they're coming in? Is it home ownership? What is it? One of the concerns that I had historically was that age group is sort of the lifeblood of the community, right? It's the next up and coming generation. They'll establish their roots and they'll backfill really the homes that we lived in as kids and have moved out, and the next families come in. Do we get deeper data where this growth has come in terms of where they live? And just for me, it's understanding, are they, is it temporary? Is it permanent? Are we providing opportunities for ownership? Have we priced ourselves out? Is there an opportunity to go deeper?
Yeah, and I think that's a piece of it is the public engagement that kind of helps to guide us of where we want to look. I think for the housing production plan, it's a broader look at identifying areas that, I think that deeper dive into a specific age cohort would be an implementation step that we could look at. And I think that would, we could do a deeper study specifically looking at certain age cohorts or other identified vulnerable populations to identify what specifically are those challenges and what can we do on a more specific level than what the housing production plan does in a more general sense.
Yeah, and to see how everything can tie together ultimately as well, right? In terms of affordable units to the Affordable Housing Trust to this community, the CPC. How does this, that's something going forward as a community, we'll have to strategize and figure it out. Obviously, there's a lack of housing. The state's addressing it, the federal government, depending on, that's been a talk during this campaign cycle, but what or how will this also run together with our challenges and our opportunities and our strategies? And it's going to be tough to figure out. The input's great, that's important. It's just how all of these programs will coincide if this becomes more politicized at the state and national level too, which just will make it a more complex problem. But there's no doubt affordability is a challenge. And that's for all communities. So that's something that will be helpful to learn, but it's a very helpful set of information and good work here. Colleagues, questions, comments? Teresa?
A few questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just comment, I apologize if I missed this, on what the engagement has been thus far? I just looked at the survey. It looks like only 109 people have taken the online survey. And I know that there have been multiple sort of, efforts to get that out, but I definitely think that since it's still open for a couple days at least, has there been more engagement in person at the in-person forum?
Yeah, so we didn't have attendance at the forum. We did have engagement at the farmers market. We were able to meet with people, and we had a kind of a storyboard that people could write their comments on, as well as an anonymous comment box. So that will all be incorporated into the final report. The survey has seen 109 responses. That'll be open until August 30th. So we'll continue to push that survey to try and get additional responses. We've also been meeting here, and we'll be meeting at Planning Board on August 5th as well.
September 5th.
September 5th.
Yep.
Yeah, mixing up my
I'm losing track of the months as well. I think that we can ask Taylor to do another push with town meeting members. I always use that as a baseline, 240. At a minimum, we should have 240 responses. So we should definitely see if we could double down there. May I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
Somewhat unrelated, but does this ability for accessory dwelling units play into this strategy or plan at all? Do they count towards the affordable home count?
I think it's something. It'll be important to note in our housing production plan. It is fairly new legislation. Obviously, our office is tracking it very closely. We have zoning proposed to preliminarily at least address the matter. That'll be going forward town meeting. We have accessory dwelling units on the books currently. We have regulations that would fit very well with what the state has proposed. That would become effective in February of this year, next year. So currently it's only allowed in the town center district. We'll be proposing to move that to be town-wide, those provisions. We also have currently in-law apartments, which are allowed in various districts and do kind of support similar to accessory dwelling units, but it does require, as a in-law apartment, a relationship between the owner and the accessory unit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What else? Carlos?
Thank you, Chris. And thank you. Just some follow-up. So a follow-up to Ms. Flynn's question on the survey. So 109 respondents so far. Do we capture data? I've heard feedback that if you take it on your phone, for example, it's not the best survey to take. Do we still capture the data that people may have input, even if they haven't completed the entire survey itself?
Yeah. So and Taylor is probably more in tune with the terminology. I think it does capture the data. I think it counts it as an unfinished response, but they're able to parse that out of who went through the full survey or skipped questions.
That's helpful, thank you, because I want to make sure that we're capturing as much data as possible, and I'm glad that there are multiple different ways that folks can participate in this process, and not just the online, so thank you for that. You have mentioned a bit about Safe Harbor, and I just wanted to have you explain, just for those watching at home, what does that mean? Why is it important for us to attain that? And also, along that thread, why is it important for us to try to make strides towards the 10% SHI?
Yeah. So just in broad terms, the safe harbor provisions allow a community, it's related to 40B development. So 40B is the legislation that allows private development to essentially supersede local zoning provisions for the creation of higher density housing development. So what safe harbor provisions do and how it relates to the housing production plan is that's a required piece for safe harbor. If a community has an active housing production plan that's been approved and then produces a certain number of housing units within a calendar year, in our case, either 74% or 100, they just changed the numbers with the 2020 census, 140 units for a 2-year safe harbor. So depending upon that, this housing production plan as approved can become certified. A certified plan means that the Housing Appeals Committee, which oversees 40B, would uphold a local decision to deny a 40B development. So it gives us the ability to seek friendly 40Bs over unfriendly 40Bs.
Thank you. I think that's just really important to stress to folks at home that, it in a way protects us from those unfriendly 40Bs. I had a list of questions here, so just quickly looking through. Actually, I think I'm good for right now, but thank you for the presentation.
Chris, one other thing, once we hit 10%, or part of strategy of hitting 10% would be good to 2030, right? So it's the next census, whenever that is, is it when it's finalized? It can't be 2030, they take a couple years anyways, but it gives you until the denominator doesn't keep moving.
Right, the denominator doesn't change, but that's the key between 2020 and 2030 is the housing market changes, then the unit counts do change, and so once you meet the 10%, typically to achieve that 10%, a town may have pursued a more aggressive housing strategy. You can dial that back. It doesn't mean that there's no strategy. You do want to maintain so that when those 2030 figures come out, you've still kept up with market rate development in terms of affordable deed-restricted units.
Yeah, it'd be part of the strategy, because if you don't, you run the risk of, okay, it's certified that now you're below, you're in the same dilemma again.
Right.
But that's just part of something that had been discussed a couple years ago and Rowan McAllister had presented as part of strategies, and something that we'll need to figure out as we go forward. We've had conversations about a robust strategy around everything. It's a complex set of rules and regulations, and the state continues to tinker. So we'll see that. Any other questions or comments?
I just had a question. In the data that you have in here about owner occupancy versus renter, with the number of rooms and things like that, do you track owner occupancy in like single-family homes as well as apartment units? And is there any way that that's tracked?
I believe that slide is based off of census data. The assessors may have more detailed information, but I haven't asked for that, and that's not typically something we track, so.
I'm just curious. It's something, we seen more of recently with, we talk about the sort of middle housing. A lot of people used to call it starter homes, which I live in what would be considered a starter home, but I plan to stay there forever. But seeing a lot of homes in neighborhoods like that that are purchased by investors that are not, they're no longer being occupied by people who own it, but people who rent it. So just curious about that data and how that's tracked. I think the rest of my questions were covered in either in your presentation or in the discussion. So.
Thanks. Anything else? There's no action required tonight. This will come back to us. So you go through the process, and it was listed on the calendar. So we'll have an opportunity to come back, and you'll get more data. Hopefully, we'll do the push as Teresa talked about, and Taylor can continue to push. Opportunities to get the data, interpret the data, and we'll follow that and look forward to the presentation coming back to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. So next item on the agenda, new business, to review and discuss the proposed timeline relative to MBTA Communities Act compliance. Mr. Mizikar.
So I just wanted to provide a reminder to the community. Seems like yesterday, but we're nearing the end of our 90-day allotted window for the pre-adoption review timeline for the MBTA Communities bylaw. And that really sets us on a fast track. We're hoping that the state is able to meet their commitment of the 90 days, which would provide us with information before the end of next week, which includes, which would be just in advance of the next planning board. So, Justin, do you have those slides?
Yeah.
Within the drive? Just want to reference them. So this is the same timeline that we presented or talked about at the board's June 11th meeting. And so it really starts with the planning board's regular meeting. And I'm going to talk about 3 different public bodies and remind folks of their opportunity to engage with us throughout this process, and perhaps some other opportunities will present itself. So first, starting with the planning board, they have a regular meeting on September 5th. We anticipate September 5th is after the 90-day window, so we hope to have any compliance model feedback from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for the board to consider that night. And then, as we talked about on June 11th, there is this kind of dance back and forth between the planning board and the select board as we move towards the special town meeting that's required through the statute. So we would anticipate, again, if that information is available, that the planning board would vote to send a formal request to the select board to include a warrant article to adjust the zoning bylaws for MBTA compliance purposes at their September 5th meeting. Keeping with the planning board for now, their next regular meeting would be October 3rd, which would be a public hearing to review the MBTA compliance model and receive public comment. And then they would hold a special meeting, which would be the second public hearing on the process, on or about October 24th. These dates, especially the 24th, is subject to change, but this is kind of how we envision making sure that we give ample opportunity and meet all regulatory and statutory compliance. Next slide. So then when it comes to the Finance Committee, there are 2 meetings that would include some level of discussion and a public hearing on MBTA communities related to the special town meeting warrant would be October 17th and November 7th. And then finally, Justin, with regards to the select board, if the planning board votes to recommend a warrant article be included, you would take that under consideration at your September 10th meeting, and you'd actually vote to send it back to the planning board for those public hearings, which I previously described. At your regular meeting on October 8th, we would have a special town warrant ready for your consideration, and look to receive any updates that the planning department may have regarding the MBTA model and their progress thus far, which would be after their first public hearing. The board would hold your regular meeting on the 12th of November. That's where you'd make your article recommendations, and then the special town meeting would be on November 18th. So again, it feels like yesterday that it was just June and we were setting forth this plan, and at the outset of the 90-day review window, and now we're just at the other end of it and about to head into an opportunity for the public to engage with us on MBTA communities and perhaps other planning changes and adjustments that we look to make at the special town meeting on November 18th.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Michelle?
Just like to ask if these dates would be put on the planning department's website.
Yeah, we can include them on planning and on the board's webpage as well, to make sure everyone's aware. Send them out to town meeting.
Town meeting.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. No action required, so thank you for the update. Summer's come and gone, and back to hear some information from the Commonwealth. Next item under new business is to review and act to authorize the chair to sign the request for approval of the sale of Quinn 35 at Lakeway Commons from B.R. Quinn 35 Lease Co. LLC to Bell Value Add Fund 8 Shrewsbury LLC. And then this agenda item requests the board to authorize the chair to sign the request for approval of the sale of Quinn 35 at Lakeway Commons. Quinn 35 is subject to a regulatory agreement between the current ownership and the town, and then pursuant to Section 9 of the regulatory agreement, the town and DHCD must provide consent in order for the project to be sold to a different owner. And there's a letter from Buyers Council summarizing the request. Section 9 talks about notice to us, and if we don't react, actually it becomes effective. But the way Section 9 reads, so in order for Section 9B, the language is there to deny the request. However, the standards there that the package requesting consent is complete, which it is. Then there's the reasons to deny. The second one would be proposed transferee has a documented history of serious or repeated failures to abide by agreements of affordable housing. There is no such documented history. And there's a couple projects in the Commonwealth listed that this owner has, and the project is not being operated. Another reason is the project is not being operated in compliance with the affordability requirements of this regulatory agreement at the time of the proposed sale, which the project is compliant. So reasons not to be in favor of the transfer in connection with the sale, they don't exist under the standards set forth in the agreement. So we have all the paperwork that we need, we have the request, and we have the agreement. Any questions or comments at all? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the board authorize the chair to sign the request for approval of the sale of Quinn 35 at Lakeway Commons.
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGoldrick. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the road closure request for a portion of High Street from Grant Woodward of A&G Construction for water and sewer connections on September 10th through September 12th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And Mr. Woodward is joining us by Teams. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mr.
Yes,
Woodward,
I
can you
saw.
hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So, Mr. Woodward, I'll just summarize real briefly, and then if you'd like to present. But this agenda item requests that the board, in our capacity as road commissioners, to authorize a road closure for a portion of High Street in front of 40 High Street. This lot is a newly constructed home and can be viewed on the aerial view that was provided in our materials. The applicant seeks to temporarily close this portion of High Street to facilitate water and sewer connections. The contractor reports that the connections are in the middle of the road and on the opposite side of the road. To connect to the opposite side of the road will require a full closure. When connecting to the middle of the road, the contractor may be able to leave a lane open for vehicular traffic. According to the request, detour signs will be placed at the intersections of North and High and Spring and High Streets, indicating that the road is open to traffic only. In the road closure taking from 9 to 3 is to minimize impacts on school drop-off, as Spring Street is nearby, which would be at 8:45 p.m. or pickup at 3:30 p.m. So that's the parameters of this. Anything to add? I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, Mr. Woodward, but any additional comments? I do have a question, but any additional comments?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. That's what we'll be doing.
Thank you. Quick question. So there are two streets that also feed into High Street. You have Meadow Hill Road, which is on the right
Yep.
side if you're coming down High Street, and High Ridge Road on the left side. How will we notify traffic through there? Meadow Hill is not a cut-through. High Ridge could be, as they're cutting across from north to high. What can we put there to let them know there's a road closure?
We can add some more signage, detour signs, and we can also place the road closed signs on those intersections too. So they won't be able to access High Street unless it's, from that side, basically. They won't be able to go through. Do a detour and back towards North Street.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Go ahead, Teresa.
It does say that it will be open to resident local traffic, so you don't anticipate any restrictions there, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We're hoping to only have to actually close the road for, maybe a portion of each day, and then be able to plate it. So and at that time, we'll remove the signs. So traffic can flow as normal.
Yeah, those hours will be important, obviously, with the schools to be able to do what they need to do before, so 9 to 3 makes sense, given the
Yeah.
pickup and
Yeah,
drop off.
between 9 and 3, but if we can pull the signs, say at noontime, we will,
Okay,
just to keep flow moving.
thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move that the board approve the road closure request from, Grant Woodward of A&G Construction on September 10th through September 12th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Look forward to that, and please put the signage on all 4 areas. So thank you.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Last item under new business is an update on the town manager's fiscal year 2025 goals. Mr. Mizikar.
Thank you. Board members, I look forward to providing you an update. Now we're at the midpoint of that first 12-week period. As we talked about whenever we set goals in late June, we wanted to take the opportunity to try to shorten the cycle, to try to make the goals more tangible, transparent, and tolerant of changes that may be occurring over time. And I feel better about the progress and the opportunity to think about my goals this way and really look at this first 12-week cycle. So we are at the midpoint, and I'm happy to provide an update. I think we've made some good progress. So again, this cycle was kind of framed around July 16th to October 8th, and we are 6 weeks into it. So Justin, if you want to go forward, thank you. So there's 3 core objectives that we're looking into. Includes organizational culture, trust, community engagement, communication, organization development planning. And I plan to provide updates on all of those areas. Justin, you can go forward. So within the organizational culture, one of the main initiatives is to make sure that we enhance regular organization-wide updates. And I'm happy to share kind of the centerpiece that has been worked on over the last 6 months is a regular monthly newsletter that will be sent out to all employees internally tomorrow. Justin, if you wouldn't mind clicking on that. So this will be the format for the email newsletter if you want to scroll down. So it'll have an introductory letter each month, kind of talk about what's going on, a key focus area or initiative, and no surprise, I'm kind of reflecting back on the 2030 strategic plan and how this fits into it, and then asking employees to engage about the organizational values. It's not an area that we've really focused on within the strategic plan. So that's kind of a topic that I will be discussing with employees over the next month. And then there's 4 other tiles or changeable components that will feature each month. For this first initiative, kind of in the development inspiration area there, we're talking a little bit about the Town Manager Download podcast, and I'm referring employees to other local government podcasts where they may be able to search for, colleagues across the country who have worked on other or similar initiatives or maybe have similar roles, and they can hear stories and how they're innovating and making changes and solving problems. In the top right there is kind of customer service corner, just making sure that all employees, especially our frontline employees who are answering phones, who may get an errant or phone call on another topic where a resident, expressed an opinion or wants to talk about something else. We know Selco is transferring out of their legacy cable system, so we just want to make sure all employees are fully aware where they can refer any of the incoming calls or someone who may have a question about Selco Stream, provide them with that. Then the Engaged and Connected panel this month talks about me being out with employees, stopping into offices, engaging on a more informal basis with them. And then just a quick look ahead to what's coming up over the next few months, what we'll be focusing on, and that kind of culminates, at least on this list, with the special town meeting on November 18th that we just talked about. So I'm looking forward to using this resource to, have a mass communication means with all employees. And I look forward to support from all employees of also contributing content over the months to come. But this will be our inaugural edition, and I look forward to getting feedback from staff. So just jump back into the regular presentation. So values is an area that we've discussed more internally in the Office of the Town Manager, and we'll be talking with employees over the next month as I'm out and about and getting informal feedback, and then making plans to see if that's something that we want to bolster, review, or revise within the 2030 strategic plan document, since it is a living, changing document. So that's the look at the organizational culture area, and now we'll go into the trust, community engagement, and communications. Within the first area, establishing regular town manager office hours. So I am going to start off this initiative on September 24th, which will be the second meeting of the month. Of course, the select board holds office hours from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. before the first meeting on the second Tuesday of the month. I'm going to start my initiative in advance of your second meeting of the month, so hopefully that leads to less uncertainty if folks are looking to engage with us on any topic. And then we'll see how that plays out, what attendance is, and if we have to make changes from there. So we'll commit to that through the end of the year on that particular cadence and schedule. And then one of the initiatives that I brought forth was myself being present at more of the community information sessions and major initiatives, and taking an active role in planning and participating in these events. And one of the things I realize is those events certainly do occur, but I think there's an opportunity to do a little bit more in this area. And the concept that I look forward to pursuing in the near term is what I'm calling Common Ground, which is a roundtable program. And through the first portion of that, I'll be reaching out to a variety of community groups, social groups, organizations, professional organizations within the community, to go and engage with them. Perhaps it's their regular monthly meeting or regular quarterly meeting, ask for an opportunity to be on their agenda or join into their regular programming. Depending on the group, talk about a particular topic and the town's role in that matter, or perhaps just be there to have an informal conversation, answer questions, provide information of what those group members may be. So again, trying to get out in the community, trying to be on the same page with folks and have conversations so they have an opportunity to get questions answered that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to. So this will be a proactive effort on my part, and if any board members are interested in joining in with me in any of these events, I'll certainly keep you apprised of the schedule and who we'll be meeting with and when it'll occur, and I'd certainly welcome that opportunity to have you there. So I look forward to the Common Ground Roundtable program. And then enhancing insight into operations through the select board. Of course, we held our first month, you held your first monthly departmental update this evening at the meeting. So having the library here, I think, was a great way to start things off and provide some good insight behind the scenes of what they're doing and the volume of patrons and residents that visit that great facility. And then we're also preparing a regular quarterly financial update template that we can use with the board to make sure we're sharing revenues and expenditure levels regularly. And we'll do that obviously off cycle if we're going to do, wouldn't have that occur the same time as a departmental update. But we're always interested in other ideas. If the board thinks there's a regular part of the agenda or an ad hoc topic that we should address at the meetings, you know, of course, we're always willing to prepare that information or presentation. And then for the third area, organization development and planning, staffing needs assessment, we're under the development of a staffing plan. We're taking the information that was provided through the FY25 budget development process. It's being thoroughly reviewed by the Human Resources Department and the assistant town managers. We'll be taking it to the executive leadership team to make sure that the leadership that touch all aspects of the organization is in line, and then we'll make a presentation to the select board as to how that will influence, impact, or be part of our fiscal year 26 budget proposal once we get towards the end of the calendar year. I'm really happy to share with regards to the Department of Public Works Director recruitment that the position has been filled. Timothy McInerney has been selected to fill that role. Mr. McInerney has almost 20 years of public sector leadership experience. I think he'll be a great asset to our Public Works team. He's a great leader, and I think he'll bring a unique perspective to help us problem solve and focus on very customer-centric oriented solutions when it comes to our public infrastructure. And then finally, identifying areas for formal strategies. This is very much so a work in progress. We need to further vet this with the board, but as we work with you and see your work, we know that your work product would be greatly influenced by some specific strategies, formal strategies, especially in the areas of economic development and housing. That's no surprise to this board. One initial step that we have taken is making application to the Boston University Initiative on Cities that was co-founded several years ago by former Mayor Tom Menino. And the program that they have there is called Metro Bridge, and it partners cities and towns and their challenges with undergraduate and graduate level students to help work on a variety of initiatives. So we've reached out to them through an application to see if they'd be willing to help us develop an economic development strategy or capacity analysis for the Route 20 corridor, and then a housing strategy, which would be different than the housing production plan that Mr. McGoldrick presented earlier, more about how we work towards taking action towards reaching safe harbor, meeting our subsidized housing income, and how we deal with those periods when we're an interim safe harbor, full safe harbor, and addressing those age cohorts and finding strategies to make sure our community continues to thrive. So again, really happy with being able to take a look at goals on a shorter cycle. Working through them over the first 6 weeks, I think, have yielded great results. Still all a work in progress, perhaps only with the DPW recruitment behind us officially. So happy to take any questions and continue to work on these over the next 6 weeks.
Any questions? Michelle, go ahead.
Curious on the Boston University Metro Bridge program, do you know when the applicants will be selected for that?
They didn't give a specific timeline. I had an immediate an interview that same, a week or so after we applied with the director, and they indicated it would depend on student interest, and it may not just be the fall semester. If we don't hear something back for the fall semester, there's no spring application process, but they do use unselected programs for spring initiatives. So it may be as late as January or February.
Can
Go
you
ahead,
just,
Teresa.
thank you. Can you just clarify? So you're going to have office hours where really anyone, any resident can take advantage of an opportunity. I mean, I feel like you're generally accessible whenever someone requests, but it's nice to have these, formal times that are set aside for that. With regard to the common ground, do you see roundtable sessions with just groups of residents, or are you more focused on sort of established groups within the community? Because you had mentioned
Yeah,
whether it's business groups or other maybe informal committees throughout the town. So just curious how you're going to approach that.
my initial approach would be to reach out to kind of gain some momentum with existing groups, but perhaps evolve into general roundtable conversations at the library on a, certain day. It's kind of like office hours. I'm going after the groups because I know there's an audience there, and I don't, want to set myself up for office hours and not have a lot of folks come in, for one reason or another. So that's why I was thinking of going to groups like friends groups, or, there's a lot of other active groups in town, A Better Shrewsbury, the India Society, Tipping Point, and provide an opportunity for dialogue to those groups.
That's great. Thank you.
I think that'll be helpful, take the show on the road, right? I think it's important, and I think it's an opportunity for us, to the extent you want some stragglers. I think it also provides a chance to ask questions, not on camera. We can continue to do office hours, and I'd suggest that we do it, but also looking at groups and honestly, proactively reaching out at maybe less formal groups as well, to provide opportunities to ask and answer questions. Again, not on camera. It's just to have a normal discussion with people who care about the town, just like everyone around at this table as well as in the community. So it's just another chance to ask questions and get answers and talk things through and get real-time feedback.
Yeah,
right?
to listen, right.
One thing on organizational culture that at our company that we have added, and may sound silly, but I know you already have Asked the Manager TV show, but an opportunity to add, we have Asked the CEO at work, but even questions that employees have asked that have been really helpful
Sure.
as well, that to provide those burning questions that people may ask, and ask that. But I think what we see here, and it's absolutely imperative, is we invest in our employees as culture, right? And you want to keep that turnover ratio, voluntary turnover ratio, very low, because as you invest in our employees, it's a real cost to replace. And with the DPW director, I'm excited about that. Provides additional leadership bandwidth. We have a lot of great people in leadership roles. I still feel in Shrewsbury we do a lot better and really are efficient with our resources, but it's because of the people that we have and the A game that they bring every day. So focusing on culture, cannot emphasize enough how important that is. And it was during the strategic plan as part of stakeholders that they provided a lot of input, and to reintroduce it and to make clear that it's flexible, and that's the feedback that you're looking for. So it's not only external facing, but it's the stakeholders with the most vibrant part of our plan to make sure that it actually is effective and the desired outcomes are achieved. So it's good stuff. Appreciate halfway through. Look forward to continued progress. Carlos.
Yes, thank you, Kevin, for this. I don't have any questions, just overall feedback. I feel great about your initiatives and what you're looking to do. I certainly look forward to hearing feedback from you about how the common ground and how office hours go, and how you being more present at major initiatives and being more visible in the community, how that helps inform the work that we do and also informing the residents in the work that we're doing. I just think that that's so key. I know that we experience it whenever we go out to communities and residents come up and ask us any questions that they may have that, maybe they had a misconception or a misunderstanding of something they've read, and, we're able to provide that information on the spot. I think that, I certainly look forward to, working with you and the rest of the board on developing the formal strategies on housing and economic development. I think that that's really critical. So, thank you for that work. And just lastly, I think folks may think a monthly newsletter to staff internally is not that big of a deal, but I know, speaking from experience at my job, we get a regular internal newsletter, and it's a nice tool to help build that strong community that you want to build within the organization. So really appreciate you implementing that, and looking forward to hearing feedback from the staff.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, we look forward to the next one and continued progress. We can go on to correspondence, last two items on the agenda. Item number 12, email received August 19th, 2024 from State Representative Hannah Kane regarding House Bill 4977, an act relative to the Affordable Homes Act. Rep. Kane summarizes the process and procedure as well as the benefits of the act, so noted. And the last item is an email received August 20th, 2024 from Peter Brennan, Executive Director of the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association, regarding a nicotine-free generation, which could be a discussion we have at a subsequent meeting, just to go over what some communities have done, including Brookline, what they did. That's the request here. It's something we could take up at a meeting or at a workshop just to talk about the substance of this, but even as part of an overall regulatory discussion, what some communities are doing in different areas. So that's so noted. But that is it for our agenda. If there's nothing else for discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for joining us. See you the second Tuesday, September 10th at our next meeting. Thank you.